Hey guys, how are we doing? Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another YouTube video. And again today, there seems like a lot to talk about, as yesterday we did have at least a bit of a recovery rally, if it's not the start of the new move back to the upside. And that's basically what we're going to discuss today. We're going to look at a few altcoins, Bitcoin itself, and see if this is a recovery or if we're just having a little bit of a bounce before we continue downwards. And honestly, I don't know what the answer to that question is right now. I'm going to display my argument for both sides of that. Starting with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin obviously pulled back into this area of support. I'll show you this right here. If we just look to your left of your screen, someone said I need to stop moving my charts around so much. I'll try and keep it a bit slower. It's just my erratic mind. But what you can see is Bitcoin pulled back into this previous structure break at about $112,000, and since then has bottomed, and we've pushed up to the highs of 115, and right now we're back at 114.2, but we pulled back to 113.6. So the first thing I want to just note is that when we have, I'm going to show you some times in the past, when we bottomed out historically, these bottoming structures aren't simple and straightforward. This is the bottom from the 22nd of June at 98k. We came down, we bottomed, we pushed up, we pulled back, we pushed up, we grinded sideways, and then popped out of the range up to that. My laptop's going mad again, great. I don't know why it's just started doing this. It's only been doing it for a few weeks, so we'll just continue anyway. But it grinded sideways on a more zoomed out perspective. Look, we popped up, and this doesn't look like anything in the grand scheme, but that's quite a significant pullback when you're thinking that we could potentially go lower. We pulled back 2.8% after only popping up from the absolute lows about 4.3. So you can imagine how that probably felt to people back in this area. Then we grinded, had a little fake pullback, popped up higher. So what are the positives and negatives to what we've done so far, like for Bitcoin? Well, you'd argue that we broke the most recent swing high, but we didn't break like the major resistance or support is what I'd say. Although I'd say this is the bottom of the range here. Let's show some areas of interest that we could be looking at. Range lows, like where prices reacted at lows. This I would say is the main range. When we lost that level and then back tested it as resistance, then we continued down. We've used that as resistance so far. We'll be looking to see if we can continue to the upside and then potentially break back into that range using that and holding that as support again. So that's what we're looking there for at Bitcoin. What we really want to see, obviously, are closes above this descending trend line here. There's liquidity all up here. All this area is liquidity here. People will have their stop losses all up in here. Oh, I didn't mean to slip like that, blooming heck. People will have their stop losses all up in here, all the way from here. People are going to have stops all in here. So when price manages to get above this line, potentially back test, you will see probably quite an aggressive move to the upside, which lines up well with what we see on Trading Different. So that's Bitcoin essentially, a bit of an assessment on Bitcoin this morning. If we look at Bitcoin and Trading Different, we have liquidity below us and quite dense liquidity at around 106k. So this brings a counter argument into the thought process, and people keep asking me, what do I think? And I honestly am going to tell you today that I think we go up, but TA suggests we could come down. That's what I think. If you want to know what I actually think, and I'll tell you why I think that, although as more liquidity gets added below, the likelihood that we come down increases. Even if it's just a wick, it could be something like this, secondary bounce, almost a back test, and out we go. It could be like that if we go down. I would say that I think we continue upwards, and I'll tell you why. At least in the short term, I just feel like we're bullish. I'm going to show you Bitcoin, obviously, on the daily. You can't dispute the amount of liquidity that we have above us. I think it's clear to say that it's much more dense above us than it is below the liquidity. And all the way up to like 155-ish K now, there's starting to be liquidity being built. So looking at some other cryptos, let's look at ETH. What's ETH done in the last few days? I've shown you this. I think that we're in the third wave correcting into the fourth wave, potentially have finished that correction, but we could have an ABC in the correction, which again, you could argue would continue to take us lower. If we just take us to the hourly, I'll show you the liquidity on ETH. We have liquidity below us here. However, for ETH, there is substantial liquidity above us. Look, and it actually makes that liquidity go back to yellow when the liquidity above us is red. Structurally, on ETH, again, not really too much to say. We had quite a solid bounce here. We took this swing high, but could you even say that? Probably not. I'd say that we need to start closing above 3.8 before we can say that we're bullish. But then saying that, I can also see a world where ETH does this, and then continues to all-time highs, just to take this liquidity below us here. Again, it doesn't have to happen. I feel like at some point this is going to get taken. It's just whether we do this first. But as I said, the TA tells me that we probably do that first because no one wants it to happen. Well, I don't want it to happen. But I do think that I'm going to lean in the camp that we don't do that. And I'm going to explain why in a second. Sorry, I'm beating around the bush a little bit. But I'm going to show you XRP and I'm going to show you Doge as well. Just so you can see, look, below every low that we've put in, there is liquidity. And it's about the last real significant area of liquidity. But then if you go to larger time frames on everything, liquidity above us is more dense than it is below. And that's also the thing that you need to remember. This is XRP, liquidity above us, 410, 420. If we go to Doge, Doge is obviously something that I've still got to trade on. So take us to Doge quickly, just to show you the same. I need to put it on the hourly. That's the 4. Take us to the hourly to show you Doge. It's a difficult discussion one way or another, and I hope you can understand why I'm saying this now. So Doge has some liquidity above us, but we bang us on the 10x and we put us on the hourly. What we can see is there is dense liquidity just below our recent low, so there's nothing to say why we wouldn't be able to just go like that, pop down, take this liquidity, and then send it from there. So that's the technical that I'm looking at that would be like a perfect world. Will make it really clear for us. But I do feel like we probably do head upwards. And why do I feel like that? Well, as I said, it's not for certain at all. If we look at ETH, this is ETH open interest. What we can see is with this little pullback that we've had here, which was only from the highs about 13% for ETH, we've lost quite a lot in open interest, which is a good sign in my opinion. Open interest for ETH was all-time highs. We've pulled back about 17% in open interest, which is good. And even on this bounce back up to the upside, we haven't started to add the open interest back. We just continue to bleed. I've been saying for a long time that ETH's open interest was at all-time highs and probably too high. I said when we get to certain levels, we'll start to see a squeeze. I think what will happen is if we start to close above all-time highs or above $4,000, this will probably continue to squeeze down as we liquidate loads of shorts to the upside. I wanted to draw your attention to that because I still think, well, first off, structurally something's changed because from this level here, we've just increased in open interest. And today, or the last 3 days, the first time, at least on the short term, the open interest has decreased for a while on ETH. So something to pay attention to. Maybe people are less interested in ETH now it's towards all-time highs. I don't know. I don't know exactly what that metric is telling us, but it's definitely something to watch. I think it will tell us that there's going to be a short squeeze, meaning that price will squeeze to the upside when we start to break all-time highs. I think that's what it's preparing for, and I think that that is what is coming. But I do find it interesting that on the bounce, we haven't re-added open interest. We've actually just continued. So we've lost open interest here, so position is starting to be closed. And even on this bounce, we've lost open interest as well. So I think that's interesting. So why do I think that we continue to the upside? Well, first off, I showed you these patterns here where Bitcoin bottoms. It's not super simple. It never is. But even in this situation, the last time Bitcoin bottomed at 74K, we bounced up to 80, came down to 75, bounced up, came down, consolidated, broke out, consolidated, broke out. It's never a straight line, although when you look back, put it on the higher time frames, like the daily, it does look like it's more of a straight line. Oh, this must be an easy time to hold when you've had the lows. Look, it pretty much just went up only. Well, you didn't. For periods, even from the low, it took, for the breakout, it took 15 days. And then we broke out and then we consolidated and this consolidation took a further 17 days, and then we broke out this time where we are now. It looks a bit more difficult. It's taken 25 days for this consolidation. So essentially, Bitcoin has come back. It's back tested previous range high as support, held it so far. We haven't seen tons of volume. I'd like to see that for more confirmation. But we're seeing some altcoins rip. I saw Mantle yesterday, MNT on ETH really starting. I'm watching Mantle right now, really starting to put in some big daily candles with some large supports in volume. I also saw obviously ETH. It's been doing pretty well. I'm going to put us on the hourly or the 4 hour just to look at ETH. Although we haven't broken those swing highs from the lows, ETH has really pushed up 10% in the space of a couple of days. And if we think that our whole pullback was only, well, to the absolute lows 13%, but to the candle closes 12.7%, 10% in like a day or two is a pretty good recovery so far. Now we'll be just in retracement levels, so it's nothing to really scream about, but I'm just explaining and showing you guys as to what potentially is coming. So looking at XRP, I wanted to have the daily close up above 312. That was because it's this level here. This is where previous support was, because this is basically the area that the candles formed before the structure breakdown and then the previous back test acting as resistance. I'd like to see us close above this level. It would basically mean that we're probably going to attempt all-time highs again. Until then, there's not really an obvious play one way or another. Again, I would suggest to the upside, waiting to see the RSI confirmation on the daily time frame. Nice to see 2 consecutive green candles taking us above at least a trend break in movements. The other thing I wanted to show you on ETH, as I've just remembered, is that we had a daily engulfing candle at the lows, followed by a second consecutive daily engulfing candle the day before. Interested to see what happens today. I do think when we get to these stages in the cycle, you can see continuation. This is why I'm leaning towards that we don't come back for the liquidity, even though technically I think we should. I'm leaning towards that we don't, because we're at that stage in the cycle where people get left behind who are waiting for specific bids. Anything can happen at this stage. It's not to say that we won't definitely come back for the liquidity. As I said, the technicalities say that we should, but knowing where we are, having been in crypto before, I wouldn't be surprised to see us continue to the upside. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. I'm getting close to getting bullish again here. I've been saying throughout this whole period, I'm not sure. I've given you the reasons why. The short-term liquidity to the downside is stronger than the short-term liquidity to the upside, but the long-term liquidity to the upside is massively outweighs the short-term liquidity. So how do you make that judgment? That's just what we've been discussing. So to finish, I'm just going to have a little look on XRP ETH, XRP Bitcoin, XRP dominance. XRP ETH hasn't really changed. We're still within this range. We're at the bottom of the range. Could we come down wick into this structure break level, which is the last point of support / sign of strength area for the Wyckoff accumulation, in my opinion? Yes, potentially. Could we just continue from here, bounce off the bottom of the range and continue higher? Also, yes. We've got some potential catalysts coming for the XRP community. I think at some point we'll see the resolution or the wrap-up of the SEC case completely. XRP Bitcoin's interesting, looking at the daily RSI, very nearly crossing bullish after bouncing on this range that we spoke about for quite a while. I said, if you remember this area that we were in, what I said was we're forming a low on this white line. I had a descending trend line in here. What I said I thought would happen is we'd sweep the range lows, and then we break to highs and we break out. And then when we got to this area here, let's just zoom in a little bit. When we got to this area here where the white box is, I drew in this resistance level and I said, look, we're going to find a little bit of resistance here. When we break out, it could be aggressive. We broke out. We've come back. We've now back tested that resistance and we're confirming it as support. But again, we want to see daily candle closes above this 0.0000072712. I hope that's the right amount of zeros. It's quite hard to read that many. I think it's 4 zeros. We want to see the daily closes above there before we can start to get confirmation. That would also give us the bullish cross on the RSI, and we'd start to be looking for upside moves from that level. Again, with XRP dominance, very similar story with potential bullish cross on the RSI. We came back, we back tested this similar level that we're talking about on ETH. You can argue this is a Wyckoff accumulation with the range highs, the spring into the lows, the push up, the close above the range highs, the sign of strength phase, creating that short-term range that we talked about. It's not even that short-term anymore because on the daily time frame now, we've probably been in this range for, not probably, we have been in this range for 250 days. We said we wanted to hold the middle of the range once we broke above it. We did. We lost it, and then we broke back and we held above it again yesterday for the daily close. So that's bullish again, in my opinion. Early signs of bullish momentum, but we still need to close above that 4.93% on Bitcoin dominant, on XRP dominance. So I hope you can see everything that I'm talking about. And the last actual chart that I did want to show you is this. It's got a few bullish things to talk about. The 4 hour we discussed in both the newsletter and on YouTube, but I put it out in the newsletter first. When we hit the 4 hour oversold area, especially to the depth that we have, it has signaled the bottom on 2 of the last occasions, which was here and here. Does that mean we're bottoming again now? I don't know. Again, the structure's different on both of these bottoms and lows. Let's see, we need to reclaim or start to claim above the 3.92 trillion for any real confirmation, which is, again, not that helpful for anybody. There's arguments to say that we could just have hit into resistance here just the same way. Let's see, this is like kind of previous support. We've almost banged our head on it as resistance. Let's see, but if we go to the daily time frame, I can argue the other end of the coin is that we formed a low, bullish engulfing candle on the low, continuation candle, obviously early in the day today. Are we going to see continuation again today to make that 3 white soldiers pattern? Again, I don't know. I'm leaning towards that. I think we go up because of where we are in the cycle, but there's definitely an argument to say we could come down and sweep liquidity before we head higher. Bitcoin dominance, I've said that, I keep saying, oh, this is the last chart I want to show you, but then Bitcoin dominance is another one that I just want to cover quickly. What we can see is Bitcoin dominance is actually creating a low, a higher low, a higher high, and potentially a higher low for a continuation for a higher high. Now, that's obviously not bullish for altcoins if Bitcoin dominance starts to take more market share. I'm not against Bitcoin dominance rallying if altcoins rally with it. I'd like to see both rallying. As I always say to you guys, the more money that comes into Bitcoin before we have the complete dominance breakdown, the better. I do think that we are looking at Bitcoin dominance breakdown or continuation breakdown. I've shown you this range. I'm going to delete it for now because I'm going to show you what could potentially be a bear flag or continuation pattern here on Bitcoin dominance, just so you can see again what I see. Let's get a straight line so I don't make too much of a mess here. So we can see this. So you come down. There's my brush now. I need to get that. You come down into the bear flag. You zigzag about a bit, and then you continue. That's what hopefully will happen here for dominance. But as long as, I mean, everything's red right now, but if everything goes green and Bitcoin just goes more green, that's the best scenario for altcoins because at some point that capital is going to rotate. So with all that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do hit the subscribe button if you did. Hit the like button as well. It's free to do, and it helps me out a lot. Ask me any questions in the comment section below. And if you want to trade on any leverage, please try out WeX or MEXC. They're the links that I have in the description below. They're both non-KYC exchanges, and I use both of them. Obviously, be careful with any exchange. Don't put significant capital on there. I never do, but I do have accounts on pretty much all the exchanges just because when things start to get crazy or you want to get access to things or sell things, you want to have as many options as you can. That's my opinion anyway. If you don't already subscribe to the newsletter, please do join 2,700 weekly readers of the Weekly Insight. I'm most proud of that, of all the content that I create. The newsletter is by far the best, I'd say. So thank you for watching, guys. Peace up. A-Town now, as Crypto Insight UK would say.